The next discussion is going to be called AI Transforming Education and Skills, and I'm going to welcome up the moderator of the panel now, Durga Prasad Kakaraparthi, who's Head of Solutions Architecture at AWS. Great to see you. I'm going to let you introduce the panelists so we don't waste time with that. So panelists, please come up. Your moderator will introduce you, but we're excited to have you here from Enguru, Wolfram, Amira Learning, and Professor Jim Incorporated.
It's great to be here, and I'm from AWS, and I've been with AWS for last 7 years, more than 7 years. Today's panel discussion is about AI transforming the skills and education. And I'm very excited to host 4 distinguished panel here, who are actually leading innovators in AI and reshaping the education and learning experiences. So joining me here is Arshan, Vakil, who is the VP of Open English and also the CEO and founder of Enguru app. And we have Anshu Manik, and he's the Director of Technical Consulting, Wolfram Research. And we have Ankur Dahiya, who's the Head of Business Development from Amira Learning. And we have Deepak Sekar, who's the co-founder and CEO of Professor Jim. Thank you for joining the panel discussion. So just to set the context, I think we all know that, and we've been talking about the Gen AI, the decades of AI adoption is kind of really brought down to years in machine learning in the last few years. But with Gen AI, it's really brought down to like a months and weeks of how the adoption is happening. And in the education space, it's continuously evolving space, and there is a lot of options for students and for the adult learners to choose from. And institutions and organizations who are in the context of the business of education are continuously evolving and rapidly changing themselves in the way that they are providing services. In fact, a recent study by AWS and research firm Access Partnerships found that AI-skilled talent is priority among 73% of the employers. There's an interesting fact, 16% of the global AI talent comes from India. However, more than this 3 out of 4 employers who actually found that although it's a priority, they can't find enough AI talent. So in that context, and to make AI education accessible to everyone who desire to learn, and Amazon launched the AI Ready initiative with the goal of training 2 million people by 2025. So that's just the context. However, I think there are a lot more interesting things and opportunities out there, and our panel here is going to be discussing a lot more on from AI and teachers, challenges, opportunities that we have here. Let me ask the first question to Arshan. Very direct question. Do you think the AI is going to replace the teacher's job?
Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. No, that's a good question, and my belief is no, not yet, and hopefully, I think even there's a lot of debate around it, but even in the future, the short answer would be no, and I can explain that a little bit. I think where AI is today, there's lots of what a teacher does that AI cannot do. Right? It cannot provide empathy. It cannot provide motivation. I know we all have those teachers who have motivated us and shaped who we become later on in our career. So I think AI is not able to do that yet. And there's a huge debate where it should never be able to do that, right? So as it stands today, I think the answer would definitely be no. But that being said, I think it has a lot of potential to empower teachers. And I think that's where the power of AI really comes through. And a few things here, right? There could be personalization, right? I think AI has a lot of potential, and we're already seeing that we're able to provide a much more personalized experience, help teachers provide a personalized experience. Few examples that we provide English classes, which are led by teachers. Now, one of the new features we're looking at is as soon as the class ends, the AI sends each student personalized feedback on what mistakes they made. So this is in addition to whatever the teacher corrects you in class, and a teacher will not have the capacity or the memory to remember exactly what mistake all 12 students made and send it to them, right? So the AI is able to provide that. It can also take a lot of administrative and automate a lot of those tasks for teachers. So I think it has a lot of power to personalize and help the teacher provide a better experience, but not replace the teacher.
It gives more time for teachers to be able to focus one-on-one with the students where it's really required help. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Deepak, you want to add something?
Yeah, one thing to look at is the impact of automation in the past. When ATMs were first introduced in the 1970s, a lot of people thought bank jobs would be impacted quite a bit. What happened back then was because of ATMs, you needed far fewer people per branch in a bank, and the number of banks went up quite dramatically. So if you look from the 1970s to now, the number of tellers per branch went down by a factor of 5, but the number of branches across the United States went up by a factor of 4. So, and what the kind of roles within the bank changed from having a lot of tellers to having more customer service or salespeople within banks. And just like that, if you look at education as well, even though some aspects of a teacher's role, like content creation, could get automated, the customer-facing or the student-facing side could get emphasized more as time goes on.
That's a very interesting example from a banking point of view. When I was doing my college in 1990s, there was actually a big protest about, the banks are getting computerized, or we're going to be losing jobs. And now I think we all know it's not the case there. So thank you for that acknowledgement, Deepak. I want to go to Ankur to ask a question on the early learning aspect, slightly different question. How is AI really empowering AI, in the early learning? Especially, do you really get a question like, is it too early to introduce technology in the early learning?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question, and I would really like to put it across in a way that if we all could imagine a village in India, and there's a school situated across winding roads, bustling market, and there's a classroom inside this school, and the students in this classroom sit with their eyes wide open because they're paired with a unique companion, and this companion is an AI tutor. Now, for time being, let's call this AI tutor as Dost, and Dost is essentially, it means friend in Hindi. And Dost is special because it understands the kids and it is able to go down to their level and make sure that no child leaves behind. Now picture a boy, Arjun, whose parents work long hours but still can't afford expensive tutoring. Now, Arjun had a problem with reading, and the jumbled letters on paper almost seemed as perplexing as skies in the star to him. But when Arjun meets Dost, it gently tells him how to pronounce certain words correctly. And it appreciates or celebrates Arjun's victories. When Arjun reads dog correctly, then there's a virtual dog that it pops up on the screen and that wags its tails or also barks when Arjun makes a mistake. But having said that, I think Dost essentially is not just an AI tutor, but a gateway to a world where reading and comprehension are the treasures that every child can discover. And phonics and decodings are not just skills that a child has to be mastered, but adventures on which a student can begin their journey. Having said that, to your question, if it's too early for the students, I think the right perspective to look at AI is not a replacement to human touch, but as a magnifier to the human efforts that we are putting already. And in India, in the land of disparity, where privileged ones have a lot of, or I can say unfair advantage over the students, who don't have necessary infrastructure, AI can play as a great equalizer or leveler and can help us bridge that digital disparity that exists in India today. AI can also, we can look it as a promise to democratize education that can work with the teachers, powered by NLP and machine learning. On top of it, essentially I would like to just conclude by saying that, AI is if we go 5 to 10 years down the line, there's a lot of hope. The classrooms that I see that exist in future would be enabled by AI and are going to help teachers. It's not going to replace teachers because with the advancement, like Deepak also mentioned, with the advancement Even in medical field, you see a lot of advancements happening, but the medical workers' demands is going to increase. Similarly, in education as well, there's a lot of hope. It's not just a dream anymore, it's a reality that technology helps us enable, enlighten, and also it's a reality where education, it's not just a privilege anymore, but a right that can be accessed by everyone. So I think that's the future of early learning. That's what it means to us.
I think right to educate, I think, is a great one to kind of end it, because if you have that, then whatever it takes to be able to empower, enable, or accelerate that kind of learning to everyone in a country like India is even more important there. So great one there.
And yeah, and to add to that, what's very exciting about it is that the cost is going to just keep reducing, right? I think the way AI is moving and computations and just becoming more efficient, I think we're going to be able to bring down that cost dramatically. So that whole thing that it levels the playing field. Today, maybe it does in a way, it's a lot cheaper than it was, but it's still a little expensive, right? It's still not going to be possible in every village in India, but it's moving in the right direction and the cost is going to come down dramatically.
And then be able to bring that consistency, what is being taught in tier 1 cities in a very private school can now be able to accessed by another remote-based school. And like a paper, like I learned paper as paper when I was in my early childhood one, because I did not get that early education or fancy one. So I learned it's a paper later, a stapler, right? So these are the things, I think what you're talking about early learning does help and bring that consistency to everyone.
And just to add to what, Anshu said, is that, to see any impact in early learning, there's a lot of one-to-one education or focus required. But no school system globally has been able to achieve that in a manner that is scalable and affordable.
Right.
And AI is something that can really help us reach there.
It's a need of the hour.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
Thank you. I want to switch the gears and then talk to Deepak on a slightly different topic about content generation. It's flourishing very well with the Gen AI time, and everyone is exploring a lot more innovative stuff. How do we effectively use AI in this Gen AI context in a more ethical manner, in a more contextual one, so that you're not exposing the learners to more toxic content or not?
Yeah, so we're now able to use AI to automatically create things like slide decks for teachers, to create teaching videos. You just push a button and you get a lot of this content created now. The key thing is there's a lawsuit the New York Times filed against OpenAI for using copyrighted content, and there's many other lawsuits coming up as well. So one big thing with Gen AI is whether people who actually create content are compensated properly for their contributions. So it's going to play out in the courts over the next few years. So one way to get around this ethical dilemma is to just work with textbook publishers. They have textbooks already, and you just take those textbooks, convert them into slides and video. That's one thing we've done, and there's no ethical gray area over there. It's completely legal. That's one way to do it. And the way you think about it also is everyone knows how to make a burger, okay? But you still have McDonald's and Wendy's. And the way I think about education is if you use GPT-4 as the baseline to create slides and videos for teachers, that's like everyone makes a burger, that kind of scenario. But if you use vetted textbook publisher content to create like slides and videos for teachers, it's almost like the McDonald's and Wendy's, where it's a more curated experience and the quality often is better. So I see this as a way to get higher quality teaching content as well.
So it's still the early days, and there's a lot more that we can do in terms of how this can be, bring that quality, and at the same time, ethics and everything follow. Just speaking about it, and thanks, Anshu, for patiently waiting. So my next question is, does AI play a role in speeding up equitable education to all? And if yes, what can governments do to make it more easily adoptable?
It definitely does, and in many ways, some of which we just heard from Ankur. Accessibility is definitely one of the first things. But what excites me a lot more is that even though it's a machine, it's not a person, it doesn't have feelings, and yet it can be a friend in the way that the student would not have hesitation to ask questions, which almost always they would have in a classroom environment for the fear of appearing foolish, right? And also, doesn't matter how hard we try, we cannot have teachers available 24/7, although an AI tutor or a parallel technology can actually be available all the time. It's available even on phone. So, equitability would come because people even in the remote areas may not have access to good schools, but they can have access to the same level of knowledge and given to them in a form which is very personal. For example, one of the things that we are making sure is that in developing our AI tutor is that it just doesn't tell you about what the solution is, rather it actually picks on a negative sign that you missed or a power that you miscalculated, which may be 1/10th part of a solution or 1/20th part of a solution. It is precise enough to capture those things. I'll be honest with you, I come from IIT Delhi and I've been topper throughout my student career, but there's a reason why I mentioned that. I always depended a lot on teachers rather than on books. And sometimes I did not do well if the teacher was not as forthcoming in answering our questions. And I feel that if I had access to those tools, at that time, I could have done a lot better than what I did because, it makes a world of difference. So equitability, there's no doubt about it, actually. Now, when it comes to government, I think that the government has a key role to play because, this technology is still in its very nascent stages. The great thing is that I believe that we have crossed the point of inflection. There was a critical gap earlier. This generative AI was not available, and therefore, even though enormous amount of technology was available, but it was actually not accessible to the people in a language that they could understand. This bridges that gap. That's very, very important. But then anything which is so powerful also can have negative impact. So we hear about hallucination and other things. So how do we manage that? That has to be regulated because if it is left open for businesses, obviously business considerations will come in play and the best interest of the consumer may take a subsidiary role rather than being the prime focus. The government can actually ensure that. Secondly, the government can create that environment for its proper growth. The example of UPI is great because it's not just about financial transactions, but a lot of other things down the road which became possible because of those financial transactions, and UPI could not have been done by a private party, at least not in India, right? So government definitely has to do that. And world over, there is a tremendous need to come up with the right types of regulations because there has to be a balance. If we're going, we have to be cautious with the technology which is so powerful. And yet, if we're going to be overcautious, it might actually preclude us from taking the maximum benefit from it. Governments can do that. Government can actually help the level playing field as well as maturing of the companies in a shorter duration of time. It's never going to be zero time for sure, but government can actually guide so that that maturing happens in a natural way, happens quicker.
If I may add.
Thank you. Want to add something? Yeah.
Yeah, one thing is with the AI tools you have available right now, we're able to create like the whole of 6th grade Khan Academy in one day. It's pretty easy to do that. And with the AI tools available now, you can actually have teaching in many different languages. You can automatically translate this equivalent of Khan Academy you create in a day into any language, Hindi or Tamil or Marathi or whatever. So I have like an avatar of mine I don't speak good Marathi, but my avatar can. Less than 20% of the world speaks English right now. And imagine just creating content in local languages for the other 82% of the population. That's amazing and impactful. The other thing AI does is about 10% of the world has some form of dyslexia. And a lot of times it's not diagnosed. People just think someone's not good at studies. But a lot of these people struggle with reading text in textbooks and stuff. Imagine converting that into video automatically and making these people a lot more comfortable. We are already seeing that happen with AI. That's just another example of it. And yet another thing you can do is, we talked about creating Khan Academy in a day. And if you can do that automatically, in 4 days, you can create 4 different versions of Khan Academy for people with different learning styles or different abilities, and make it a lot more personalized and impact students a lot more. So these are incredibly powerful tools, and a good government, which, a lot of states in India already have one-on-one, student to laptop ratios. Or computer ratios. So imagine a government just decides to create 4 different personalized versions of Khan Academy in the local language, spending a little bit of money. Every student can have access to amazing education, and I think it's very exciting.
No, agreed. Thank you so much for that. I think providing the AI tools is important, but as Anshu also mentioned, I think it's good to have the right to education and have that, equity, among the, citizens and the learners is actually very more important there in that.
Deepak, can I add something to what Deepak just mentioned?
Yeah, sure.
Was about the dyslexia. So students are unable to read because of that. And what really helps students with certain disabilities is more practice and personalized tutoring. And what in our classrooms today, for a teacher who's handling 40, 50 students at a time, that individual attention is next to impossible. And when it comes to students with special learning needs, they even fall behind because that attention is not being provided. We've seen that in our case, that Amira is, through its 10-15 minutes quick assessment, is able to identify how many students are at a risk of dyslexia, and then provide one-to-one tutoring. They can practice as much as they want to. It has about 5,000-6,000 stories, and read as much as they want to. So if identified at the right age and given guided intervention practice, I think, again, talking about what we've been speaking about, equitable education for all, that dream is very close to reality with AI being introduced, and if these tools are used in the right manner.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. But I want to actually ask Arshan a question about something. My interest one is, what are your thoughts on how AI models are evolving and how providers are thinking about training models to address potential risks?
Yeah, sure. So, and that switches gears a little bit from what we've been discussing so far. But AI models, generally, there's a lot of action, right? Things are moving super fast, and we're seeing that. So there are a few trends, I think, in the short term, which we're already seeing, which will accelerate. Models are becoming a lot more multimodal. And are able to understand beyond just text. And we've seen this with ChatGPT, of course, but audio, images, eventually videos. I think it's getting, that's becoming one important aspect that they're developing a lot. Second thing was, again, near term, I think NLP capabilities are improving a lot. And this has a lot of implications for education specifically. NLP, NLP is natural language processing, so the ability to understand human conversations or things like tone and empathy in the voice, like stuff like that is getting better and better. And this can impact a lot of things, right? For education, it can impact how you teach, like for us specifically when we're teaching languages, it can impact how you have a conversation and being able to make it more human-like. It can impact things like being able to correct even things like assessments like essays, which earlier are difficult for a technology to really assess. So I think NLP is another one that's really moving quite fast. So I think that's near term. I think longer term, there's a lot of talk about AGI, artificial general intelligence, and that's a sort of debatable topic on which direction that should go, but the whole concept that currently a lot of models are focused on specific things, while AGI would be more general and be able to perform anything that an average human being does, right? So I think that's a little bit more medium to long term. And on the second thing about providers, right, I think it's tricky. I think there's again quite a bit happening. So a lot of the larger providers like OpenAI, etc., are focusing a lot on they're trying to improve reliability. I think that's a big one, the focus area of hallucinations, etc. So I think we can expect that future versions of ChatGPT are a lot more reliable, and as soon as they're fully reliable, then their use can increase exponentially. Right now, there's always a little bit of worry that are they fully reliable. So I think that's something they're going to work on quite a bit in the near to medium term.
I think
Thank
I would
you.
like to add something. One of the things that is not, I mean, it is being talked about, but I don't think that it's getting the emphasis that it really deserves. LLMs, they do very good quality generation of language, but it does not understand things. It does not understand math, does not understand physics or chemistry or biology. And yet, there is a big rush to use, LLMs in those areas, and that creates tremendous amount of risks for the consumer. So as far as models are concerned, there's a lot of work going on. We are also doing in our company to make sure that it's math accurate. So right now we are doing it using our math engine as the backend, so that the LLMs do not try to do math because they cannot do math, right? But then what is also being done parallelly is actually come up with, rather than general AI, come up with expert models who do certain specific things very well, and they would be in the back end along with the generative AI to be able to give student the right piece of information the right way without any of those inaccuracies. That's going to take time, but the good thing is that even today, it's possible to do that if you're using the right backend and not use it without that precaution.
So if you look,
you want to add something? Yeah.
yeah, if you look long term, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Moore's law, where every couple of years computers got much faster, right? So if you look at LLMs, as the number of parameters go up, you're seeing a similar sort of trend where they get more and more powerful. So if you extrapolate, so with GPT-3, we had hallucination rates like 30% sometimes. With when you go to 4, it's about 4%. When you go to 5, they've already started training 5, I'm hearing. You'll probably have much lower hallucination rates. And as the hallucination rates get lower and lower, you can actually start seeing that use student-facing. All this time, you do need to have a teacher or someone curating the experience, otherwise you're going to get errors. And if you're actually looking to make money out of it, people won't give you money if the bot answers wrong 2% of the time or 3% of the time, unless you give it for free like Kanmigo, where people don't complain about something being wrong when it's free. So I think you'll start seeing more and more tutor applications as these models get bigger and bigger with time. That's one use case. The other thing is models so far have been largely text, and like the others mentioned, you're going to start seeing more image recognition, and voice is getting better and better. So the future really, if you look 5 or 10 years from now, you're going to have robots move about. You're already seeing Tesla work on that, where they have a Tesla robot there. And these robots are going to be able to see, they're going to be able to process information, they're going to be able to walk around. And so while the AI you're looking at right now is just something you can use for online learning, it can't actually go into a physical classroom and teach. In 10 years' time, these robots are going to be good enough to go into a physical classroom as the models get better and better.
No, it's so true. I think it's an important one that you touched upon. Thank you, Arshan and Anshu and Deepak, on covering how the models are pushing the limits and then getting better and making things better. And to your last point about the quality is more important, that's what is getting better with this. With the innovators actually evolving these models and iterating more, I think with LLMs and LMMs, AGI, I think that's the way that you get to see a lot more innovation coming in, to see more tools and more the high standards and coming in that are more helping in our adoption there. So I just want to ask you one last question. to each of you, if you could just spend some time, can you tell us what are the top 3 things? I mean, if you look at folks here, most of them are decision makers, change makers, or the founders, startups. What are the top 3 things that you think that we should take away with this AI transforming, as far as the skill transformation is concerned, as far as AI transforming the education as a business or as for a country? What are the top 3 things that we should actually, key takeaways, or 3 things that we should actually stop doing? Either one you can pick. Maybe you can start with Anshu, you.
I mean, the very first thing is that the word caution. Because as I said, sometimes, or rather most of the times, business considerations may be detrimental. For example, if one is coming out with a math tutor today and tomorrow he realizes that it gives wrong answers, it would have been much better that they actually spent time in the lab for quite a while and then it was actually introduced in the market. So the main takeaway that I have is that one has to understand the real strength of the technology and then have the capability to combine the right sets of technologies to get the right outcome. It should not be purely business driven, right?
And Ankur?
I think one key takeaway would be to look at AI tools as an enabler or tools that eases off the burden of the teacher. So it can never replace, as per me, the teachers. Any job that has a requirement of EQ and decision making, I think, and teachers need that most. So that cannot be replaced by it. But there are a lot of repetitive tasks that teachers have to perform. So those can be outsourced to these AI tools, while teachers can focus more on higher order thinking skills development with students.
AI is going to give you more time for those. Focus on the tools, which will give more time for teachers to focus on the, the students and learners.
Make it your friend. AI is your friend.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, thank you. I'll probably go to Deepak first and then last to Arshan.
Yeah, so what we are seeing in our work is a teacher or an instructor who knows how to use these AI tools smartly can be 3x to 10x more productive, or they need to consume 3x to 10x less time creating content, and the quality of content is often better. So every single educational institute in the US needs to look at how they can augment their teachers' capabilities with some of these tools in a smart way. And a lot of content teams within the US, at least, they don't have too many engineers. If you look at a school district in the US, very few school districts have engineers in them to help the content people get 3x to 10x more productive. So that's a huge opportunity. So every school district needs to either find a partner or hire engineers in-house, competing with Google and Facebook for AI talent. So it's clear most school districts probably need a partner to work with. So that's one takeaway. The other takeaway is we have the opportunity to do tremendous good with all this. Imagine just creating content en masse, very high quality content, and providing it to every single child in a state. It's incredibly impactful, and we need to take the initiative and get all that done. Because right now the only barrier to that is people not being aware of it and doing it. The cost of all that, if you consider the budget of a state, the cost of all that is not that much. And the third thing is, when we do have AI being used, we need to handle it very, very carefully. Because if you try to run fast and break things, you can break a lot of things. So we need to be incredibly careful about privacy policies. When you can I can create a likeness of any professor or teacher with 10 minutes of a video from them. And these are things you got to be super careful about. Make sure you never get hacked. Make sure, you get consent from everyone. There was this case where there's this website which does deepfake voices, and they allow anyone to just upload a piece of audio without consent and clone anyone's voice. And you had Joe Biden's voice get cloned, and bad things happen. So no website should be responsible like that, and everyone needs to get consent before they actually do something. And even with major personalities, right? The law says someone needs to have passed away more than 80 years back before you can actually use their likeness without getting into legal trouble. But even if you can do that, even if I can clone Abe Lincoln, every video I create where Abe Lincoln teaches needs to have Abe saying, hey, I'm the AI version of Abe Lincoln. I can't just say I'm Abe Lincoln and I think, Chicago is the greatest city on earth, for example.
Thank you. I think providing those guardrails are important when you're actually providing these for the tools and for students and all. Arshan, the final comments from you, and love to hear more.
Yeah, no, these are very interesting thoughts, and I think there's a lot of caution is very important, and it's going to be crucial because this technology can be quite powerful. But one of my key takeaways is slightly contradictory, self-contradictory, but on the one hand, AI is completely here, and everyone, whatever business you're in, should be using AI in some form or another. Whether we've discussed a lot in education, we're using it a lot to our consumers with new features, but even day-to-day tasks and automating that, the power of AI is something that if you're not leveraging yet, you really should be, or you will fall behind quite fast. And I think that's definitely a key takeaway. But contradictory to that, I think the worry, and there's a lot of hype that as soon as like ChatGPT came to mainstream media, there's a lot of hype that, oh, all these jobs will go, etc. I think adoption and what will happen, how it plays out, is almost impossible to predict, right? And so it's not that suddenly in a month or so we're suddenly going to have industries that don't have jobs anymore, etc. I don't think that will happen either. No one is really able to predict where this technology will go. For instance, if you looked at OpenAI itself, right? Sam Altman, like 10 years ago, predicted that we will not be able to do any of the creative stuff. We'll be focusing more on specific tasks. And as LLMs developed, the opposite happened, right? Creative tasks are something, because even hallucination rates a little higher won't matter because there's no perfect correct answer. So you have tools like DALL-E and Midjourney that came about faster than tools that are solving math and biology where they're very specific answers. But if you ask the question 10 years ago, people are thinking it's the opposite, right? It's going to be that we're going to be able to fix those first. So what will happen over the medium to long term is not predictable right now. But so it's like I said, it's self-contradictory. AI is here, but don't worry about it suddenly disrupting in a way where things are going to change overnight.
Thank you, Arshan. I think that's a great way to summarize. One is about how it's transforming the education and where innovation is happening, but at the same time, let's have the security and privacy as the fundamental one there, while the fundamental is really to be able to reach the education to every student or the citizen and have everyone has a similar access at the same level. But it's only going to empower and enable. I think that's a great way to kind of summarize it. So thank you so much once again, Deepak, Arshan, Ankur, and Anshu. Thanks, everyone.